What is going on, guys? Jason Burke here, Styles Clash for Life, coming at you on YouTube, and today I've got some football focus. Before we get to the Steelers' third and final preseason game of the 2022 season, I wanted to talk about a few cuts. Now, this was the week Pittsburgh had to get down to 80 players, so they made 5 cuts from their roster, 3 of which are no big deal, but 2 of which I kind of want to rant about. I saw 2 of these cuts, and I was very, very confused. So I wanted to make a quick video because I want to make more consistent content for you guys and not just do game reviews. So I wanted to bring you guys these 5 cuts and kind of see what you thought about them because I was a little taken aback by 2 of these. Now, there are 5 here. Mateo Durant, the undrafted free agent from Duke this offseason, a guy that I liked. I had a 4th or 5th round draft grade on him. We got him as a unsigned free agent. So I was pretty excited about picking him up, and I thought he had a chance to be running back 2 this year. Lo and behold, we just have a lot of guys competing for running back spots. We had the guy Major Teague from Ohio State who got hurt, and now he's cut as well. We signed Max Borghi, another undrafted free agent who looked good in college. We had Jaylen Warren, another undrafted free agent who looked great in camp and has looked very good in preseason. He's like one of the shining stars. Obviously, Najee is a starter. Benny Snell's been here for a while. McFarland went to college with the coordinator. We got all these guys fighting for spots. Durant did look decent in his short time. I think he had like 1 or 2 7-yard carries in his first game. Had a really nice block. 1 or 2 7-yard carries in his second game. A really nice block when Kenny Pickett was eluding a sack and running around the corner, getting the outside edge. He made a nice big pancake Steeler block, flattened the guy. Really good block. A nice run here and there, a nice block, but didn't get a whole lot of playing time, didn't do too much. Again, there's only a few bones to go around. We're only keeping 3 running backs, so there was no chance he was going to make the roster, so I can understand the cut. Nick Skiba, the backup kicker, he's been 2 for 2 in preseason. He's looked good. He's probably going to land somewhere, but there's no chance with Boswell getting re-signed to a contract that Skiba's going to make the roster. There's no reason for it, so cutting Skiba makes sense. Christian Blake, the receiver out of Atlanta, pretty solid, like 4th receiver kind of a guy out of Atlanta, made some nice catches. I've made, I think, 1 catch here in his 2 games. There's a lot of wide receivers on this team. There's so many guys on this team. We're going to have a hard time getting to just 6, if that, even with Anthony Miller being out for the season and probably being gone too, but Christian Blake is gone. No surprise there. The 2 guys that really surprised me, number 1, quarterback Chris Oladuken. Now, I know what you're saying. He's a 7th round pick, and we already have 3 quarterbacks on the roster. Right. So why draft him in the first place? I don't want to be one of these guys that gets too caught up in complaining about a 7th round pick being cut, because you're going to miss on 7th round picks more than you're going to hit. Obviously, you're drafting guys in the 7th round for a reason. A lot of guys you draft in the 7th round could even go as undrafted guys most times. You're just kind of taking a reach on some guys, right? But this didn't make any sense from day one. We already had, even after, can't think of the quarterback's name right now that passed away. Haskins passed away. Even after that happened, you had Mason Rudolph on the roster, a guy that was coming into his final season, who Pittsburgh wanted to give a chance to. Tomlin has liked him. He started for us before on multiple occasions. So you had Mason Rudolph already on the roster. You go out and sign and pay for a 2-year quarterback in Mitch Trubisky to either be a short-term starter for the next rookie or be a bridge for a rookie this season. And then in the first round, you draft for what you can arguably say was a reach. He looks pretty good right now, but in hindsight, with the other quarterbacks being drafted in the 3rd round or later, drafting one and as a top 20 pick here was considered quite a reach at the time. Kenny Pickett was considered drafted way too high at that time. Again, he's panning out now, so in hindsight it looks different. But you draft a quarterback in the 1st round. So now you've got a 1st-round quarterback draft pick. You've got a veteran signed draft pick in the offseason, or a veteran signed pickup in the offseason, and you've got Mason Rudolph. So now you've got 3 guys on the roster who you want to compete for your starting spot. 3 guys fighting for your spot, right? So why sign a 4th quarterback? 4 quarterbacks never make the roster. Pittsburgh oftentimes goes with 2 quarterbacks more than 4 quarterbacks. There's a better chance that one of the 3 guys we already had gets cut before a 4th guy makes the roster. Then you go and sign a guy in the 7th round, and he never gets any reps. He didn't get any reps until this past week, just before the 2nd game started, when he didn't even play. So the whole camp, he got no reps until the very, very end before the 2nd game was played, and never even played a single down in either of the games. And now he's been cut. So now you're saying you're going into week 3 of the preseason with two guys. It looks like Trubisky and Kenny looking for the starting spot, with Rudolph trying to either secure a backup spot or the rumor is possibly getting traded to a team like Detroit, who we're actually playing this week. But you never gave Oladoken any kind of practice reps. You never gave him any kind of game reps, and you were never going to. So now you've just cut a draft pick, who when you could have signed somebody else. There was an article on, I think, Steelers Depot or something on Twitter, where several guys were talking about all of the 7th round draft picks in the past 5 or 6 years we've made that have been guys that have made an impact, including Mark Robinson this year, who's come in and looked pretty good so far through 2 games. Hit or miss, but looked pretty good through 2 games. You've got all kind of guys on this roster. There was an offensive lineman who was here for quite a while, Calvin Beachum. There was Brett Kiesel, who was a starter for many years. Fear the beard. Brett's the man. But you have guys like that. You got a guy in Trey Norwood who started for us a lot last year, who's played really good for us this season. Was the number 1 player in the week 1 of the preseason. Trey Norwood's been great. You got so many guys, not to mention around the league, talking about Tom Brady and stuff like that. You can find long-term starters. I know that finding all-stars as the 7th overall pick or the 7th round pick is an aberration, but you can find long-term starters like plenty of those guys I just listed in the 7th round. Granted, you could have taken a shot on somebody else and missed, but why draft a quarterback there when you know they're never going to play for us? You've already got 3 at least. And even if you trade one, you're probably not going to keep Oladuken on the roster. It's never going to happen. So why not go for something else we could have used, like an outside linebacker, like a safety at the time before we had re-signed the 2 guys we signed? There's so many other spots. The offensive line could sure use another body right now. My God, do they look bad. You could have signed one of those guys. You weren't sure about the health and future of Stephon Tuitt at the time. You could have signed another interior defensive lineman, somebody on the front 3. There's plenty of spots we could have signed. Another tight end. Granted, we had gotten Hayward, but there's another guy you could look at tight end. There's so many other spots. We hadn't picked up an undrafted free agent running back yet. We could have drafted a running back. We could have signed Jaylen Warren in the 7th round, and he could have been our RB2 this year. So there's so many other spots that are more important that you go and draft a spot that you don't need. You're just admitting you're throwing away your 7th round pick. And again, I know 7th round picks don't often hit, but they can. I just listed off 5 or 6 names that are long-term starters, and some turned into stars, and some are currently playing like stars. So it seems silly to me to throw that away. So I understand why they cut him, because we don't need him, but I don't understand why he was drafted in the first place. It's a wasted pick. The other guy that I want to complain about here, them cutting, is outside linebacker Gennard Avery. They signed him this offseason in a cheap deal coming over from the Cleveland Browns. I think he played for Cleveland for 3 seasons. Showed a few flashes of brilliance, but didn't do much for Cleveland. Came over, and I gave him a shout-out in Game 2. He was kind of quiet in Game 1. Game 2, I listed him as one of the best defensive players on the field. He was, I think, the first or second guy I listed in my defensive shout-outs for Game 2, because he did a lot of things. He had a batted ball. He had a couple of nice quarterback pressures that weren't on the stat sheet. He got, did he get a sack? A sack or a tackle for a loss? A few tackles on the running back. He was solid in Game 2. He's a veteran guy who's played for a couple of years now, started in Cleveland, and is a young guy who's fitting in our system pretty well. Pittsburgh has made a lot of gaffes in these past 2 seasons at outside linebacker. I talked about them cutting the Chiefs guy, or trading the Chiefs guy, even though he asked for it. They didn't play him enough, so that he wound up being released. And then he went over to the Chiefs and started and played well there. We cut our 4th rounder? I think a 6th round, the guy from Miami. The steal from Miami that I loved coming out of the 6th round. They cut him in spite of the fact that he had a good preseason. He wound up starting for the Giants and getting a few safeties and sacks there. Played well for them. We had Tuzar Skipper on and off the team, who was cut at a time before he was really seen in the regular season, but was a camp phenom and a preseason phenom, and now he's back here again. But that's at least 3 gaffes in the last 2 seasons where we had guys that stood out that never got a chance to be any depth here for us. And invariably in the last several years, Dupree at times, and then in the last 2 years, Highsmith and Watt have gotten hurt multiple times per season. They are invariably going to both miss time during the season at some point. You hope they don't, but there's a good chance they will. Dupree in his last year missed some time. Highsmith in both of his first 2 years have missed some time. Watt in his last 2 years has missed some time. These guys get injured because they're attacking every play and they're banged up. And Watt especially is going to have 2 guys on him. You know that you got an all-star in Watt and a potential all-star in Highsmith, but they're going to miss time. They're going to need downs off. You need a veteran presence back there, like the guy we let go to the Chiefs, and like the draft pick we stole in the 6th round and let go for no reason. You're going to need someone else back there that can do stuff for you. They've been using guys like Delonte Scott, and I know that Tuska's still young, and I'm kind of leaning back off Tuska, not being as hard on him. But you have these unknown guys who don't make a ton of plays for us, and you need another presence back there. Gennard Avery, so far, has very much been our third best outside linebacker. You can argue he's made more plays than Highsmith, because Highsmith hasn't played much. He hasn't been in there all that much. But you can argue that he could spell Highsmith and be our third outside linebacker. He's a good, valuable depth piece for us, a young veteran who's made some plays early on in preseason. Why would you cut him? Now, someone else made the point online that I saw, they could just bring him back. Well, there's a good chance they can't bring him back because everyone is looking for 3 or 4 year young offensive or defensive linemen out there, or outside linebackers. People are looking for guys like that. The other guys we let go and traded got scooped up right away. In the past, all the guys we let go wound up on other teams within a week or so because we're letting go of good guys, and you might not have the luxury of bringing this guy back. I understand you're going to shuffle some moves, and guys are going to get hurt. But again, guys are going to get hurt on other teams, and they're going to say, oh, Gennard Avery, young guy out of Cleveland, he's got starting experience. He made a few plays in Game 2 for the Steelers. We'll sign that guy on a quick 1-year deal for cheap. Any team would do that right now because a lot of teams are looking for backup depth. Why you would let go of somebody who has played pretty well for you so far and been a nice third outside linebacker who you're going to need at some point during the season, at very least, to spell downs for these guys and most to fill in for injuries, makes no sense. I'm really mad about the move, and it's the 3rd year in a row we've made some bonehead moves at outside linebacker to cost us depth in the future, and I hope this one doesn't cost us too. So those are my quick thoughts on those cuts. What do you think? Am I overreacting about Gennard Avery? Are we going to get him back? Am I overreacting about the 7th round pick in Oladuken? Could we have drafted somebody else there and given them a better shot? Or is the 7th round pick just meant to be thrown away? What do you guys think? Tell me in the comments below. If you like this video, please stay tuned. I've done position breakdowns on all of our positions this offseason. I did draft videos, I did free agent videos, and I've covered our first 2 games of the preseason, and I'll be covering the game this Sunday as well. So this Sunday after the game, come back and check out my final preseason review, and I'll also be doing a cutting the roster down to the final 60, 63 or whatever it is, 53. I'll be doing the final roster reveal of who I think should be on the roster and break down who I think should make it and who should not. So come back and check those out, and I will see you guys real soon.